Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Apologies for the late in streaming our fourth webinar series. We're having some technical issues, but I think it's all been resolved now. My name is Kwame Nanefempon. I will be your host for today's session. This is the fourth webinar series that the Pan-African Center for Climate Policy we've been hosting since the inception of our environmental education program, which we use to reach out to individuals, climate activists, advocates, educators, professionals, individuals all over the world. The fourth online webinar series about environmental education on Conference of the Youth. The team is going to be on the Conference of the Youth and COP27 Youth Perspective. It's being held today. Our speakers for this session are all wonderful environmental protection advocates with great achievement. Let me go straightly to give a brief background. When the platform is open to them, they will also be in the position to say a word or two about themselves before going on. So our first speaker is a community development and disaster risk management enthusiast. His name is Mayokun Iyaomolere, who is a founder of Plucking Nigeria. He's an environmental activist with 6 years experience in promoting climate-friendly solutions and actions. Mayokun is driven by the desire of an environmental sustainability conscious world with individuals and institutions as its front runners. I'll go to the second speaker. Welcome, Mayokun. Let me go to the second speaker. The second speaker is a UN Agora Award winner, Stephanie Lamma Ewi. She has over 9 years of experience in research and development. She's the director of programs at the Pan-African Center for Climate Policy, where she focuses on developing entrepreneurship support and programs, partnerships that facilitate the representation and channeling of rural voices, especially women and children and youth at national and international level. And then our third speaker, Goodness Dixon. He's the founder of EcoClean Active Initiative, an environmentalist, also environmental educator, a climate justice activist who's also from Nigeria, as Mayokun, our first speaker. And of course, our second speaker is from Cameroon. Goodness works with youth across the globe in addressing environmental issues to achieve a sustainable environment. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the single honor to welcome our three astute speakers for today's series. So straight up, we will go to our first speaker, Mayokun Iyaomolere, to share his perspective on the COP27, which was held in Egypt last year, and the youth perspectives, sorry. And then we will have some question and answer sessions after all these three speakers have had opportunity to speak. And we'll open that to the audience who have joined us all over the world to ask your questions. So Mayokun, the platform is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm grateful. I'm honored to be among this amazing lineup of speakers. And it's awesome to connect with my brother Goodness on this platform again. So for me, the youths were not as involved as much as I would have loved to see in the COP27. but I think we had better youth representation this year than in the previous years, because there's a lot of conversation in that line. There's a lot of shouts, there's a lot of cry, and many organizations, many agencies, institutions, and all that sponsored a lot of youth to be in attendance at the COP27. But again, it was still not representative enough. And from all the negotiations, from all the conversations that happened at the COP, I saw different panels that were made up of youth, different side events that were made up of youth, and I really loved it that they had those platforms. But in the key decision rooms, in the key rooms where the key decisions were being made, where the key drafts were being written, where the key negotiations were taking place, youths did not have as much access as they need or as they should have had. And, ultimately, the whole COP, I would not say it's a big win for the planet, for nations around the world, but it's a step, it's a good step, especially as regarding the loss and damage issue, which I have reservations about too, because, okay, I'll just mention my reservation is that when we are pushing loss and damage, it's a conversation of people that have caused damage is paying up for it, people that have caused loss and damage paying up for it. And the way I think about it is that these people will then continue to cause loss and damage since they can pay for it, and just rationalizes it. And everybody was happy about that there was headway about that people committed to paying this and that. Hopefully they do pay, but we shifted away from the conversation of addressing the issues that really leads to that loss and damage, the issues of fossil extraction, use of fossil fuel around the planet, and how it is why we are even talking about loss and damage. So loss and damage is a reactionary measure, but we are ignoring conversations. We are not, this last COP took away focus from the real conversation that I think should be had. That should be the preventive measures. We don't have to have loss and damage to handle it. Can we operate in ways where we don't get to have so much loss and damage so that there's not even conversation about that in the first place? So I think that's my general thoughts about the last COP27. Yes, youths were better represented as compared to past COPs, but we need more representation. We need to be more involved in the key negotiations, and we should not shy away, even as much as we are calling for loss and damage funds, we should not shy away from the real cause of the whole environmental situation around the planet, global warming, climate change, and us trying to meet the Paris Agreement, 1.5 degrees Celsius. So that's my general overview of the last COP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayokun, for sharing your perspective. I will come back to you after the speaker so we can get more insight into how we can now encourage especially youth participation in future COPs and some other relevant resources or information that should be made available to young people. So we'll get back to that. So let me just go to our second speaker, Ms. Ewi Stephanie Lamma. The platform is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me this opportunity and the platform to talk. And thank you, Mayokun, for laying the platform for us to have this conversation. Actually, COP27 was my first COP, and I went there with a lot of expectations. And for the fact that it was called an African COP, made it even more exciting for me. And like I said, I went with so many expectations and I was looking to contribute at my best, not knowing exactly how the COP structure looks like. I was, first of all, taken aback by the organization of the space, where there were pavilions, there were different zones. People had access to some zones and others didn't have access to those zones. And just like Mayokun mentioned, youth couldn't get access to decision-making places where decisions were actually being made. However, for the first time ever, COP27 hosted a children and youth pavilion, which was to provide young people a space of congregation and deliberation of their crucial roles in the climate sphere. So the children and youth pavilion was to showcase the power of children and young people at the organizational level and with major stakeholders and as leaders, and not just as observers to important conferences like the Conference of the Parties, the 27th Conference of the Party. So, but I think one of the questions we left with as young people, despite the fact that the Children and Youth Pavilion was established, was how do we get involved as major stakeholders? So the Conference of the Parties, actually, knowing that majority of Africa's population is made up of young people, escaped giving the greatest percentage of participation at COP27 to young people, despite the fact that it was an African COP and majority of Africa is made up of young people. Representation of the youth was really limited, and we hope that the Children and Youth Pavilion will stay on and continue in the next COP. Young people at COP27 actually raised their voices when it came to advocacy. And that was advocacy outdoors, outside. But the question is, what they were saying, was it heard? Because if they were not on the decision-making tables, at the decision-making tables, and they were shouting and screaming and demonstrating outside, were they actually heard? At a level, some aspects around loss and damage were discussed, and some countries pledged to pay for loss and damage. But how are we sure about them fulfilling their pledges? Because clarity was not given on how these pledges will be paid, and clarity was not also given when it will be paid. So youth, I saw a lot of youth demonstration, youth advocacy, which I think was a great approach for young people, knowing how agile young people can be. And we've seen how demonstrations across Africa have led to wars, crises, guns, and all. But at COP27, youth were more mature in the way they demonstrated. But at myself, I left disappointed because I did not exactly know what I was coming back to my country to do as a youth who went to the conference of the parties, the 27th conference of the parties. All I saw was me coming back and doing what I've always been doing. And I did not have any word to keep me going. I had to encourage myself by myself to make sure that humanity is impacted from how I'd originally been working. Youth did not live with a motivational statement. Youth did not live with a place where they knew that, okay, we can get into this place and we'll have the resources that will enable us to complete what we need to complete back home. So I think youths were actually, I look at it more like it was COP27, bringing youths was just an answer to a cry that has been going on, but there was really no clear job description or no clear responsibilities assigned to youth, or no clear responsibilities assigned to what youth were going to do, or how they were going to get involved at the conference of the parties in Egypt. So at this point, I think that more had to be done because little or nothing was done when it comes to youth, to understanding the place of youth at the conference of the parties. Some youths were actually there at the conference of youth where they had to sit and make their deliberations and talks. But that was like another event on its own, which seemed to be a lot more separate from the conference of the parties, which was not supposed to be so. Every decision that was made at COY was supposed to be incorporated in the climate documents for countries, for nations, and for governments. Countries had to take personal decisions to send youth representatives from their spaces, instead of sending older people who have attended over 20 conferences of the parties, or have attended all the 27 conferences of the parties, conference of the parties. We see had people who could boast of how many COPs they have been present in, but nothing had changed. And rooms were not given for young people who were new in the field to come and get an understanding of how things should go and to give their perspectives. I was really bothered about the different pavilions, and I hoped that this will not be a repetition for other COPs, where pavilions will be created to establish, to create separation, or to create marginalization of certain groups, while other groups stay at the decision-making table, and others, because maybe they don't have the skills, maybe they don't have the years of experience, maybe they don't have the capacity or the finances, the power, the positions that can enable them to be part of decision-making platforms and programs at a young age, are kept back. Youth perspectives when it comes to COP needs to be amplified. And I hope we can amplify that in subsequent COPs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephanie Lamma. I think you've gone with it's what I like about having speakers share their different speakers share their perspective. I think you've gone a step above go much details and looking into our test speaker, Goodness Dixon. Goodness, can also share your perspective from the angle of youth.
Yes,
and then
can you hear me?
Any other experiences that you have. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. I'm happy to meet my brother once again, Mayokun, and my sister, Stephanie. And to the audience, it's a privilege to be among you this afternoon from Nigeria. So COP and then COY. Well, I would say I was privileged to be one of the delegates at COY 17. And as we know, COY 17 serves as a space for capacity building and policy training, which will prepare young people to participate at COP. And it also empowers young voices for the process, understand, to shape the policies around government. So that's now bettered, or that now resulted to the COP27. So from the COY 17, we moved to COP27 with that feeling, with that power, with that energy that COP27 will be quite different from the previous COPs that they have had in the past. And COP27 was actually my first COP, and it was that we have had serious climate crisis in my country, looking at the desert encroachment took place in my country. So my presence at COP was for me to be able to share my story, to speak up for communities who don't really have the voice or who don't have the privilege to be at the conference. So looking at the whole COP entirely, it was termed an African COP, meaning that we'll have more of African voices, more of African energy in the whole conference. But after the conference, it was as if it is just the regular coming to take picture, coming to meet new friends, because from the results and the outcomes, we have not really seen something tangible to hold on to. We saw that they approved loss and damage finance, and I was privileged to engage with the EU delegation, where they brought youth leaders from different regions, Africa, Europe, and then other regions. And then for us in Africa, we say, see, Africa contributes less than 4% of the climate crisis, but we are suffering the most, while the developed countries who are greatly impacting this our environment are not being held to their contribution. So I spoke in the aspect of the Africa perspective from our regions, how we are being impacted, how the youths are being impacted. But after the meeting, I just felt, okay, maybe this is a kind of a show, just to show that they have brought the youths from the different regions to speak. But we have not seen results. We have not seen anything, something to hold on to.
think we are losing Goodness. Hopefully he will be able to.
Coming back to our own continent in Africa, some of the youth activity countries, they were devastating because
yeah, as I said,
want to actually hold on to. So, but I
as I said in my
can you hear me,
introduction,
please?
yeah, Goodness, we are losing you. I think you are putting across a very important point, but we are losing you because of your network. So just to let you know, but you can continue. We'll try and get the best part of. But you are coming out with a very important point, but we don't want to lose that details clearly due to the network. So just to let you know.
Okay. So the COP27 actually, where we had more of the voices from our continent in Africa speaking up, raising their voices. We didn't really see more result from it actually, and could not make it to the conference because of lack of finance, no badge. So it was quite, devastating for youth activists. So for the next event, I think we should who are the youths pick up in such
Okay, so Bismarck, we are sorry, Goodson
conferences.
Yeah, Goodson.
How do we go about the regions that will get?
Goodson, we lost you from where you started with making. I think you're trying to make some recommendations for the next event. That's where we lost you. So I don't know if you can go to that point again, and then.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So for the next event,
yes,
I feel we should have
I remember in my
a
introduction.
serious conversation because to engage.
Okay, so you said for the next event, if you can repeat that again, what do you think needs to be done?
So
okay, Goodson, I think we are losing you now. We are having problems.
For the next event,
yes,
we should have a let's come together and then speak up. Who are the youths?
Again, it's not clear. So let me go to Stephanie Lamma. My question. So hearing all the three speakers, I think there was one commonality that runs through everything that you guys have said. That experience was not the best of experiences, as in especially in your case, Stephen Lamma, being a first-time participant. But did you have the opportunity to make some contacts with other participants, other youth participants? And secondly, did they also share that same experience? Let's look at participants from other parts of the world, because I know there were a lot of youth participation from other parts of the world, but not just Africa, but other parts of the world. Did they share the same experience as you did in terms of the barriers within reaching out to exactly what you wanted to do? Because yes, there are youth perspective, there are youth pavilions, children and youth pavilions, but exactly there's a reason why you went to the program. And the question is, the other participant that participated, in the other youth participant, did they also share that same experience as yours?
Okay, maybe I can go for that.
Yes, this was for you, Stephanie.
Okay. So, like Goodness was saying, young people do most of the work around mitigating and adapting to climate change. Young people are those more on the field and trying to work with the communities on the ground, and also they know exactly what is happening down there. I was opportunity to be part of a webinar when I returned from COP, and during this webinar, I realized that we had this group of people from different countries. We had Europe, America, we had both North and South America, we had Africa, and also from Asia. And from every indication, it showed that Africans were more expectant to the outcomes of COP27 than other continents. Maybe because it was held in Africa, and at some point we felt like we were entitled to some of the things that the implementation, it was an implementation COP. So we were tired of the talks, and we were looking forward to action on the ground, because Africa is the most affected as when it comes to the climate crisis, whereas they are the least causing the crisis. So it was an opportunity for those on the African continent to be able to raise their voices and get the world to know them. And I think that's why Africans felt like they needed more to be done at this COP, unlike those across other continents. So that webinar made me to understand this, because why some people felt that something had been done at COP27 to an extent, Africans on the webinar felt that more could be done and best could be done. So I think that is the perspectives I've been able to get from discussions with others. And when you get to the youth pavilion, the youth and children pavilion, and you have discussions around climate issues and what's happening, you realize that we have a lot of concerns when it comes from young people in the southern part of America. I was opportunity to be part of the UN Global Climate Summit, where we had representatives from South America who had the same experiences like most young African climate leaders have, from the meetups, the networks, the discussions I've had with a few of them. And I realized maybe it's because of the state of the continents, the positioning that has been globally placed, making them third world countries, and believing that maybe global North countries see like the money that has to be put in, or the finance that has to be put in to ensure coverage for loss and damage is too good to be brought into continents that maybe have been termed dark continents, too good to be brought into continents that have not, that maybe don't meet what they are, their status or something like that. So that is just my perspective, and based on some of the discussions I've had with other people, especially young Africans from different parts of Africa, having the same thoughts and the same ideas concerning why they thought COP27 needed to have been better or best than what it actually ended up to be in Africa. Like, we don't have any trophy going back home after COP27 to say this is what has been done in Africa, and we are keeping it for a legacy, to know that COP27 actually brought this change within our continent.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Goodness, are you back? I believe your network, it's probably you might have changed your location. Okay, so do you have any contribution to finish up? Because I want to give you the platform to finish your presentation.
Yes, I was saying that there's a need for us to sit down as young people and have a serious conversation around youth participation at conference. Because sometimes we have youth that have the capacity, that knows how to engage with leaders like this, but they don't have the means, they don't have the resources. Why there are other young people who have the privilege, but they don't really have the capacity to engage with leaders, to know the whereabouts. So we can have a serious roundtable. Let's discuss, how do we bring up young people who have this capacity, who are at the grassroots, working at the grassroots, who understand what's happening, so that they can be able to engage, to shaping the policy, to have good results, so that we won't just go there and make noise and then carry placards, and then at the end we return back to our country without any result. So I feel that that is the best way now to approach things, because they might just take us because maybe we're just ranting, making noise and the rest. But when you have a serious conversation at the round table, definitely we will have a good result from each of the conference that we'll have in the next, and then whatsoever. So that is my own finish up thought on that.
Okay, so I was while preparing for this session, I was doing some literature review, and I came across an article, I think from Global Witness or something like that. It was talking about a COP27. But coming down, I came across a paragraph which, well, I believe the writer was saying, putting out the facts, but it didn't really sound well for me. I didn't like it. If that's a situation, then of course everything that you guys have said today is on point. And I just want to read through that again for the purpose of our audience and even our speakers. I said, who is involved in COP? Who is involved in COP? That was a question. And it said politicians, diplomats, and representatives of national governments are perhaps the most important people invited to COP. Okay, the question is, do you agree? Is that the case? Okay, I'll come back to that, but that's a question I'm asking. I want to put up to our speakers. They say are perhaps the most important. They said many other people attend to try to influence. The word here is influence. So it is, for me, it sounds like as though as the COP is a platform where people go there to lobby, right? So yeah, you are going to influence. So you have to have a point, you have to have a voice, you have to have a platform to influence. So it's like a bargaining table. Oh, we want you to do this. Oh, we want this. Everybody's like going to lobby for something. So where is the platform for young people? Okay, if they are saying, like the article is saying, that politicians, diplomats, and representatives of national government are perhaps the most important people invited to COP. And this is basically as a result of maybe the writer's own experience, because like as Stephanie said, that in the past you met some participants who have been going there over the years. Okay, so at least they have an experience with different COPs and seeing that, okay, politicians are most represented, diplomats are most represented, and representatives of national government are perhaps. So again, this is where the problem is. If those sitting at the table are the same people that we feel that they are not representing the interest of their people, are the same people that we rely on to make decisions in terms of commitment, then of course, where is the way forward? If activists, advocates are not allowed to make, yes, you go out there, you do your own demonstration and, you know, walk on the street and show placards and all that, but is that enough? And do we agree that politicians, diplomats, and representatives of national government are perhaps the most important people invited to COP? And if that's the case, how do we change that narrative? I'm putting the question up to you. Mayokun, this goes to you, and then Ewi and Goodness, you can try to answer that.
Hello, I'm so sorry. Could you please do a recap? I was lost for some
Yeah, so what I'm
minutes.
saying is that there was an article, and about COP, on the COP. And in one of the paragraphs, it said, who is involved in COP? And then the writer said, politicians, diplomats, and representatives of national government are perhaps the most important people invited to COP. Okay, it continues, but they are far from the only ones. Okay, many other people attend to try to influence the outcome, How do they influence the outcome? So there are two questions here. How do they influence the outcome? For example, many fossil fuel making several lobbyists joined the talks to attempt to protect their industry from much needed action to keep coal, oil, and gas in the ground. So which means that, so it depends on your interest. So you go there and it's like you are lobbying, you are protecting your interest. Okay, so the fossil fuel industry, they go there to protect their interest, making sure that nothing is changed, nothing goes down, but they get what they want from the bargaining table. This is my understanding, because I've not been to the COP, any of the COP meetings, but this is my understanding, that you go there, you bargain. It's like, you know, everybody's bargaining. So the question is, where does young people fit in? If we should go by what the writer is saying, that politicians, diplomats, and representatives of national government are perhaps the most important people invited to the COP. And talk about lobbyists. Okay, lobbyists, they're making mention of those in the fossil fuel industry. And I think it goes down to even talk about those that are land and environmental defenders. So young people, I can say, I don't want to answer the question, but I can say that young people's issues are more or less like a cross-cutting team. There's nothing standing for youth. Do you agree that politicians, diplomats, and representatives of national government are perhaps the most important people invited to COP?
Okay, thank you very much. I get the question now. And for me, I think the answer is very simple. Because truly, the people that would be most recognized in COP, the people that would be given the platforms to have most of the key conversations, to be in the decision rooms, are the politicians and diplomats and all that. Please pardon any background noise, trying to do this while on the road. But so I think it's simple. So the way forward for me is for young people to actually become politicians and diplomats. I think that just solves the problem. So we are in a world where the people that are leading these conversations, they are older people, and when they eventually pass off, the whole responsibility is going to fall on us, on our generation. Now we are going to be the next set of leaders. So nothing should be stopping us from already being in rooms or being politicians or being diplomats, and to be part of those key conversations. So my answer to that is, yeah, young people need to be involved very much more and young people should be recognized, officially as the people, one of the key category of persons that need to be there. But I think a way to navigate that easily is for young people to actually be part of politics and to become diplomats so that they can represent their countries, their nations in these high-level conversations.
Okay, so I will chip in again. So does it therefore means that let's say the next COP, young people shouldn't go as just young people coming from different parts of the world, and then they'll meet each other, at the first time, and they'll begin to, but should young people form a network so that every youth participant that will be participating in the COP should be recognized in a way? I don't mean to be approved to be able to attend, but should be recognized, or you have to sign up to that platform and say, okay, this year I'm going to the COP. I'm coming from, let's say, Cameroon or Nigeria or Ghana or Canada or China. I'm going to COP. And then should we have a voice so that when we go there, we will not be scattered around? Okay.
Yeah,
so that we can counter what the diplomats and the government are saying if it is not in the interest of young people. Is that the case? I mean, I'm putting it across everyone.
I think I understand what you're asking very well. And there's a network of young people called Young O. It's the youth arm of UNFCCC, and it has young people from all countries around the planet, and it's a recognized platform in the whole COP, and it's a channel through which young people can voice out their all the related issues. But again, I don't want us to forget that the whole COP agenda is not just something for young people. It is a conference about the planet. Let's not forget also that there are older persons that attend COP and do not get access to some of these key negotiation rooms. There are old persons. There are a lot of hundreds of old persons too that attend and do not get the access. But of course, we know there may be a deliberate agenda to shut young people out because they have this energy, they have the voice, the vibes, and they are so. There's a lot of demonstrations, and they want things to really come in favor of young people. But ultimately, the goal of the whole conversation, the whole negotiation, is to have a better planet. So I don't want us to limit the conversation to just demands of young people. Yeah, young people are seemingly the ones that are maybe speaking more truth to the situation as it is. And that's why I said that the best way, I think, even if we have a network for young people that is recognized, that is allowed into the decision rooms, I think the way governments are set up nationally and internationally, the people that will still have the highest say with the reality we are operating in right now are the diplomats and the politicians. So what if these young people are diplomats and the politicians representing the country, then nothing stops you from voicing for your country, because yes, you are the official representation of your country, you are a young person. So in that way, you have embodied the demands of young people, from around the planet, and you are also serving as a young person. You're also serving as a politician or diplomat. So I think that part would enable us to have more to effect the conversations, to effect changes in the conversations at COP better than when we just want to have a platform of young people. I'm not saying that will not be recognized or will not have its own impact, but I think the impact would add up more when young people are actually representatives of countries as the politicians and diplomats from those countries. So that's the way I think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayokun. I'm charging you up now. and I'm so happy that this conversation is going on. Let me go to Goodness. Hopefully your network is getting better, and maybe then we come to Stephanie again, and I'll put in maybe one or two other questions to before we wrap up. Goodness, are you okay to come in?
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you very much. But this is a very serious question, because if you can recall back in my last speech, I talked about we having a serious conversation around youth engagement. Now, you know, as human, naturally, we're after our human. So I won't say that those who are involved, the politicians and then the government and then the CEOs and whosoever should not attend, actually, because everybody have their role to play in the conference. So it is now left to what is the agenda? What are we looking at? That will help us in shaping what we want to achieve. Because if you want to catch a fish, actually, if you throw the hook to the water, you don't expect to catch a fish. But when you put something, maybe a worm or whatsoever, it will entice the fish for it to come towards the hook, and then that will catch the fish. So if we as young people, we want to achieve something, because most times these politicians, they're after their own interests. Either managers or CEOs or whosoever, they're all trying to protect their own interest. And we too, we are trying to protect our own interest, because we are looking at how to ensure that our future is bright for us, so that we will not get to a point where we lose everything. There was a time that the Prime Minister of Barbados, she's an elderly woman. She's the Prime Minister, but she's someone that is very sincere. If she speaks in the public, she addresses everything, addresses every issue, not minding her position, not minding what she's after. But she speaks to power, and we respect her for that. So it is now left for us to sit down to say, it also can protect our own interest for our own good, for our own future. So involvement of youth, of lobbyists, of politicians, or whosoever, we cannot limit their own engagement. So it is left to us now as young people to sit down and have a serious conversation. What network do we go as? Now we have other youth network, like the Yongo, like Fridays for Future, and then the likes. Now every of these network also are going for their own interest. Actually, there's no young person that you will ask and say, will you like to travel to this country to engage with leaders, that will tell you no, except maybe he or she is busy with something. But everybody wants to get a privilege to also be among the delegates, those that will speak to these leaders. So that is how I see the whole questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodness. Stephanie?
Thank you. Goodness, I think Goodness is hitting some reality, some truths about the mindset of young people. And with the whole question, the first thing we need to take note of is we are not denying the knowledge of the elderly. We are not refusing that we don't want to be led. An African proverb, I think from Nigeria, says, what an old man sees sitting down, a young man will not see, even if he climbs the tallest Iroko tree. Young people, what we are saying is, why the old man is sitting, give the young man a chance to climb. But now we are in a society where the young people are sitting and the old man is climbing. And this is not solving the climate crisis. The climate crisis is a gender crisis, which means it cuts across different dimensions. It cuts across different humans, status, wealth levels, gender, sex. It cuts across everything. Everyone is a victim of the climate crisis, and there's no way we can escape it. Whether you are young or old, you are a victim of the climate crisis. And we need all hands on deck to be able to solve this, to take climate action that is without bias and effective, without politics. But now, the bigger picture or the bigger picture that is hidden about the climate crisis is the politics behind it. And like Goodness and Mayokun were pointing out, if you need to get on the ladder, you need to become a politician to be able to partake on the platforms that make you able to make concrete or contribute in decision making. And that is not it. That is why till today we still talk about indigenous voices at the climate table. Vice President Agora mentioned something. Why at COP27 during his plenary session? He said, out of 14% of climate finance sent into Africa, just 14 sent into Africa, 1% goes to indigenous communities. And where does the other 13% go to? The indigenous communities that are closest to the natural resources, that are being asked to protect the forest so that it can absorb carbon dioxide, and they stay underdeveloped. They still live in huts because they are trying to protect the forest, conserve the forest. Their livelihood is poor. Their children don't go to school. They barely have a meal a day. And in case they have a meal, they consume less than $1 a day. These people are being asked to keep the forest.
I think we are losing Stephanie, just when she's getting fired up. There's something I like about environmentalists, and let me put the word environmentalist. The passion, you could feel that people who really care about the environment, and when they speak, like you guys are doing today, I could feel that passion, because you care so much about the environment above your own personal interest. Mr. Ma, we lost you.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I got disconnected.
So I felt the passion. I felt that the passion was coming, and then we lost you. So please, whatever you're stopping it, I want you to come back, because that is what I know I've experienced over the years about environmentalists, people who really, and you are somebody who's working on the grounds. 1 minute you are doing the policy work, the next minute you are doing the grounds work. So you are able to kind of combine, including all the speakers here. But I've known you very well over the years. 1 minute you are having your boots on the ground with the indigenous people. The next minute you are in Egypt or US influencing policies. So it's always good to listen to individuals like yourself. And today I'm happy to meet Mayokun, and of course Goodness. I've been following Goodness on LinkedIn over the years after our first webinar series. So continue. I'm giving the platform again to you before we lose you, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you very much. So what I was saying is we have these indigenous people who are being asked to conserve the forest that needs to absorb the carbon dioxide that is produced. And these people have the least compensation of 1% of climate finance that is sent into continents like Africa. So why don't we get them represented so that their voices can be heard at the highest level? Because that if we need to see who is doing the highest work, they are the ones doing the highest work. And get into these communities, you realize that we have lots, especially with the communities I work in, I realize a huge number of young people who are there working farms, establishing farmlands and palm plantations and all, just because they want to get a livelihood. The other day, someone was asking me that, why do you think someone who is closest to the forest, we want to conserve it when their child is sick? They are not able to cut down a tree to sell it and make money to be able to pay their child's bills. But while they are busy protecting the forest, a policy is stamped. Someone gets a document from up, gets into their forest, takes down as many trees as they want, and export them. So how do we expect these people? And then over the years, I've come to realize that they are tired of keeping the resources, and they themselves have decided to destroy these resources that they have been protecting or conserving because they are frustrated. They are not making any gain from it. They are not making any profit from it. Their children are dying. Their houses are being destroyed. Flood is destroying their houses. They are experiencing landslides. Every day they're having one problem to another. But policy, those who are actually sitting and making a policy, some of them don't have these experiences. Some of them have never in their lifetime had this experience of seeing their clothes washed away in a flood. Some of them have never had the experience of seeing their houses covered in a landslide or lost a relative in a landslide. Some of them have never watched the sea come into their apartment and sweep everything like it never existed in their homes. So they sit up and they go to the places where those who are suffering the most have to be, and they make the decisions without even knowing. Someone says experience is the best teacher. How do you even make decisions for things you have never experienced? How do you even stand to represent people you have never met? The reason we keep shouting that young people should be given a place at the decision-making platform is because initially I said here that young people are those who are more on the field. Young people are on the field, and most of them are working because of their passion. We will have some of them working because of other gains, but we have a majority working because of their passion. And that is why, because they understand what is happening on the ground, they can be able to stand in the gap for those that they have been working with. Policymakers have been taught to formulate policies, to develop policies. They have been taught to build policies. That is why we need them. Some young people don't have strong backgrounds in policy formulation and development. That is where we need the big guys who understand how policies work, so that when we make our policy propositions, they are able to take it, scrutinize it, look into it, and see how feasible this can be. Because we are talking from an angle of experience, from an angle of empathy. Every day we say we need a bottom-top approach. And how do we get a bottom-top approach? We need simple representation. We don't need 5, 10 people leaving a country to go to COP. We need an indigenous person. We need a lady. We need a young person. We need a man. We need someone that represents the child group. We need, if we can have 10 representatives or 5 representatives representing different angles, the disabled, different angles, we are going to have 10 voices leaving a particular country because an alliance had been formed within that country. So if young people have to be represented, then, Mr. Kwame, you mentioned earlier about forming networks, establishing networks in countries. That is something that is very essential. And we cannot go talking or establishing international networks without beginning charity at home. But how willing too are young people to come together, to work as one man and as one voice, to represent their countries? And how willing are our countries able to recognize the networks that have been created by young people? For example, in Cameroon, it takes a while for you to get an organization, a network legalized. And even when it gets legalized, soon you start getting a lot of visits. It's discouraging. Maybe you are working towards solving something within a society, a community, your community. And then very soon you get tax come in and you begin wondering, why should I be paying tax for something that is to solve a humanitarian problem? So we realize that we are having, it's what I would say, it's our systems are just so corrupt. And the point where I've realized corruption the most is at the mid level. Oftentimes, policymakers, they have good intentions. The people at the bottom, they want to be heard. But the intermediary between the people at the bottom and the policymakers are those that bring in the corrupt practices. And at the end of the day, the voices of the people are not heard. Not because they don't want to be heard, but because we have wrong representation. And if young people don't learn to be truthful, don't learn to be straightforward, don't learn to be more responsible, policymakers or the elderly, we find it difficult to trust them, to have to hold responsibilities that concern the destiny of nations. For you to be able to develop a policy means that you're controlling a country's destiny. And if a young person who cannot be able to stand out and do work like they say they want to do, how can they be trusted with a country's destiny? I'm not giving thumbs up to those who are sitting on seats and refusing that young people should not sit on them. I'm saying that there has to be a balance. Those who have gone far, give space for others, for the responsible youth to occupy that space and sit as mentors, guide them, tell them what to do, teach them. And those young people who are taking advantage of everything happening around them, it's time to consider your ways and make a change. Is this the life we want to pass down? Is it the legacy we want to pass down to the children, younger generations that are yet to come? The children that are yet to be born, is this what we want to pass on to them? I don't think so. That is why when we take money, for example, from donors as a young person, a young organization, make sure we go to the field and do what we told them we were going to do. When we start doing what we said we were going to do on the field, we will not have any reason not to be trusted. The reason we cannot be trusted with policies is because we have not proven trust with the work on the ground. And it's high time we begin doing so. And the second thing I want to talk about is communication in climate change. Where I come from, most of West Africa, we have a common language, Pidgin English. Most of the indigenous people around my areas communicate in Pidgin English. Can COP documents be translated to local languages so that local people can understand these languages, the whole concept better? I can't go to my community and start telling someone about loss and damage. It took me a while to understand that myself. I can't go to a community and start telling them about mitigation and adaptation. It took me some time to understand that. But if there's a way I can mention that in Pidgin English, the woman who did not go to school, but has a local idea of formulating a policy, we give her proposal. And the best I can do is to carry this proposal up to the levels where they should be displayed and give it to policymakers and ensure that these proposals are looked into and policies are formed from them. And as time goes on, the capacities of this woman who did not go to school is built so that she does not need a PhD, a master's, a bachelor's degree to sit and make decisions at the climate change decision-making tables. She can come with her indigenous knowledge, she can come with her traditional background, and she talks representing the community where she grew up in. The climate crisis is a gender crisis, and everyone needs to be on deck to solve this crisis. We must find every way possible to make that happen and not leave people out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. When you're flowing, I don't stop. You know, I'm not one of the moderators where I feel like, oh yeah, we are running out of time. What is running out of time? What is running out of time when the key points are coming in? What is running out of time when this information is so informative and beyond informative? What is running out of time? where these key issues are so sensitive, what is running out of time, right? Where this is a moment, this is an opportunity for maybe someone else, someone who might not have had the opportunity to even know about COP, understands that, oh, there is something called COP. What is it about? This is a moment where we have to trickle down the conversation to the grassroots level. You've said a lot, good saying, and Mayokun, this is so interesting, and at least we have to wrap up. You know, we have to wrap up because of time. But let me just there are some questions from our participants, and I think maybe there's a comment or suggestion or input. Let me read that. This is from Awud Salam Mohammed, who's with us at the Pan-African Center for Climate Policy, working from our Ghana office. They said, our politicians seem not to have policy direction with regards to curbing climate change. Okay, there's a submission. As voluntary organizations, and I think this is a question, what can we do to let these politicians to incorporate climate change issues into their political manifesto for future enactment? I am worried. Of course, you have to be worried, Awud Salam. I am worried, especially in African continent. Of course, you have to worry about Africa. So I think the question Awud Salam asked, yes, I think since everything that the speakers have been saying this morning, and then maybe this afternoon or evening, wherever you are, and the few things that I've kind of noted down is that we have to move from negotiation and planning to implementation, right? The COP, it's all about making commitment matter. That's what I know. It's all about making commitment matter, because at the end of the day, it's about the commitment. But how do you move from just talk shops and lip service into making sure that the commitments that the agreement that we all kind of abide with, kind of make sure that we come back and then we say, oh, this is what we wanted to do, and then this is what we've been able to achieve, making commitment matter. I'm trying to explain that. We need strong background in policy formulation. But again, how willing are young people themselves? And I think we said that, how willing are young people themselves? And this is where we come in. We come in as advocates. This is where we have to send our advocacy. And I think we have to commend Pan-African Center for Climate Policy for even trying to come up with a climate change manual, which we started piloting in Cameroon. Now we want to put it in an app. So very soon we will launch the app, so that all this, like one of the positions that suggestions that Stephanie said about translating the COP into Pidgin, if that is even difficult from that angle for institutions and organizations to kind of support, what can we as organizations do? Let's say using the COP, using the app, if we can translate all these things into those languages, and then get some support to be able to implement it and make the app available to our partners, okay, for them to be using, but that's the essence of the app. So we translate these things into Pidgin, into different ways that we can communicate with to the grassroots person, including the students, youth, in-school youth, out-of-school youth. How do we get them in volunteer activities, so that everything should not just be about money, or I'm finishing school and I'm going to look for money, or I'm going to this profession because it makes a lot of money, or kind of I can make a lot of money. Instead of it's okay, I'm going to this profession because I see it as an opportunity to help someone. So how do we educate young people, so on and so forth? So this we can go on and on and on. But what I think we should do in our next webinar series, is.
Sorry, I don't know if I can come in very briefly as part of the response to this question.
Yeah, go on. Yes,
okay, thank you very much. So the point I want to make is a line of thought I developed sometime last year. Well, over a while now, but I think it's a line of a path that we need to do. And presently, I'm even running an academy about it, a virtual academy, because Nigeria, we are preparing for our general elections by next month. And, for us environmentalists, we have been asking a lot of questions. We have done some rallies and demonstrations and all that, asking for the climate policy or the climate agenda that our presidential aspirants have. And painfully, none of them really have something tangible to present. So I have been thinking of it in this light that, yes, there's a whole climate issue that needs a whole lot of attention, that needs a whole lot of funding, that needs a whole lot of voices, demonstrations, policies, and all that. But again, climate issue, we know in Africa, we have a lot of infrastructure problem, we have a lot of poverty problem, economic challenges, and most politicians in most parts of the country want to have initiatives or systems or projects that will address those as fast as possible. So that, okay, when you are leaving office, for example, as a president, you can easily reference that the dollar rate reduced when I was president and all that. So, but remember COVID-19, when it happened, everybody had to address it immediately. So the singular reason why climate change issues are not being addressed immediately is because they don't have immediate impact. Like they don't have the impact we are feeling now are from series of environmental changes that have been happening over time. And because we still have an opportunity to cope and adapt, people or our politicians and even people like us don't see it as an emergency. So they rather see infrastructure as an emergency, see healthcare as an emergency, see gender issues as an emergency, and all of those poverty, hunger as emergencies. Now, I have been thinking, if we cannot even make a win with, ensuring that our politicians take up climate issues as a major sector, how about we make sure that in these other sectors that they take as priority, that they are also implementing projects or they are also carrying out initiatives in that line in the most sustainable way possible? Because ultimately, if you are developing the transportation sector in your country, there will be a lot of, more, maybe possibly more automobiles in different forms, and they will burn more fuel. So can we implement, transportation projects, progressive ones that would still be in sustainable manners? Can we have healthcare projects or programs that would be run more sustainably than the conventional ways they are being run? Can we run healthcare systems? Can we run education systems that would instill more sustainability? So if we are not being very progressive with focusing on climate change, but climate change exists, or the climate is changing because of activities that go on in each of these other sectors. So how can we push for these other things, these other sectors, for them, for advancements in those regions, but in those sectors are now run in a more sustainable fashion. If that happens, the climate footprint or the environmental footprint of that country is going to reduce. If a country, says we may not be able to directly address climate change, this and that, but we want to run our systems in more sustainable manners that will reduce our environmental footprint, I think overall, on the long run, it would also contribute to the climate issue. So my summary is that, when we are addressing these climate issues, we tend many times to differentiate climate change, though we know that it is caused and affected by things happening in other sectors, but we tend to focus on the solution exclusively as, a different entity, as a different unit. But I think we need to return to the point of addressing climate change, addressing environmental issues, even in those other sectors of infrastructure, of healthcare, of education, of gender equality. If we are able to have better environmental footprint in those projects or in those sectors, then it inadvertently affects the environmental issues, or sets it in a more positive light for the environmental issues and climate issues in that country. I hope you got my point. So that's just the addition I wanted to make.
Thank you, Mayokun, for adding more fire. Fire is burning now, and if I'm not careful, we will exceed already we've exceeded our time, but it's worth doing that, because such platform is very hard to kind of put together to be able to make sure that these brilliant ideas that you guys have, and the work that you are doing at the grassroots level, it's being projected, internationally. Yeah, so it doesn't stay there We need this platform. That's why we are recording these sessions. And our web team, I've had Bismarck here with me. I'm an amazing guy. It's a very experienced tech web developer who's here with us today. And hopefully we're able to get the recording out there for everyone, those who have the opportunity to watch it again and to listen to this conversation all over again. I think myself, I will do that, but there's things that I have to learn from the stuff that I've learned, I've listened today. In the process, it's very hard to kind of capture everything. So it's always good that we have the recordings going on. Goodness, do you want to close with a remark in terms of a final word from you?
Yes, thank you very much. Last year, that is after the climate conference, I sat down to look at some things, and then I felt, what do we think we can do to achieve greater results when it comes to environmental impact, when it comes to climate change? And then I said to myself, I think it is enough for us to be showing, or to just have our photograph out there without really going down to the grassroots. So what I'm trying to say is this: we have had this webinar now, and we have talked about the youth perspective. Now it's now left for us to now go back to our various places and then sit down to say, from this webinar, what have we achieved? Where do we want to go to? What results do we want to see? Then we'll now start to implement all this, because we need to move from just speaking, from just writing, from just making a post, to doing the work at the grassroots. So I think that will really help us in achieving our aim, because when our leaders begin to see what we're doing at the grassroots, do we begin to pick interest in what we are doing, no matter what, no matter their political whatsoever. Because imagine what music and other industries are doing globally, that they want to bring in all these people into the climate change, into politics, because these industries have impact. They are influencing people. So we at the environmental space, what can we do to influence people too? So I think that is what we should be doing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodness, so I think we've come to the end of, yes, our fourth webinar, environmental education, Conference of the Youth, COP27, and Youth Perspective. Our speakers today, Miss Ewani Stephanie Lamma, from the Pan-African Center for Climate Policy, Mayokun Iyaomolere, oh my God, from Logan, Nigeria, and then my very good friend Godson Dixon from EcoClean Active Initiative Nigeria. Guys, you're amazing. I just don't know how to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And we'll continue with the work, just like Goodness said. We'll send a message out there, we'll take action. You guys are you're already doing an amazing work. We just have to kind of see how we look at the gaps